Hello. At one time in the United States, popular slogan was, "Waste not, want not." But our actions today seem to be more in line with waste and want. Many of us have become consumers that produce lots of plastic waste. We replace instead of repair. And this has become a common method for our lifestyles. As a child, I was regularly involved with recycling and have done that throughout my entire life at this point. And I've done a fair bit of research in recycling waste, how it impacts our environment, and things that we can do about it. Today, I'm going to try to encourage you to look at your habits for plastic waste and encourage you to produce less plastic waste. And I'm going to do that by quantifying the amount of plastic waste that's produced, identifying the risks and hazards that plastic waste has in our environment, and what you can do to reduce your plastic waste output. The Environmental Protection Agency estimates that in 2018, 35 million tons of plastic waste is generated. That's approximately 5 million elephants worth of plastic weight. Unfortunately, of the plastics that were created or wasted, only 25% were recovered in either recycling or energy generation, which is a startlingly low number. Talking about this doesn't even address the fact that there's estimated 360 billion pounds of plastic waste in the ocean, as defined by Earthday.org, that indicates that there's roughly that much. Now that we've talked about how much plastic waste there is, how does that affect anyone? What's the problem with plastic waste? Well, for starters, plastic waste isn't biodegradable, which means it will continue to grow. It will not naturally go back to its raw components. It'll just get smaller and smaller over time, if anything. Another concern is that a lot of this plastic will become litter, which will get into our fields and our oceans. There was a study done by Laurent Le Breton that was published in Scientific Report talking about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and evidence that it's rapidly accumulating plastic. And what they found is that when they evaluated these garbage patches, approximately 99.9% of the trash they evaluated was plastic. So this is just going to be a continuing problem where plastics will continue to grow if something is not done about it. Also, when these plastics are left out in the ocean, they eventually shore up on beaches in different areas due to currents that carry them along. Or they're hazards to wildlife, where wildlife get caught in plastic wrappings like this, where they're deformed in this case, or injured because someone left a plastic straw that got into the ocean, and now someone is getting it trapped in their nose and now has to have it physically removed. One last byproduct of plastic production is that it consumes oil. According to a report done by Adina Saydenilov, 6% of oil production was used for plastic production, and by 2050, that number will go as high as 20%. So these are all major concerns for our environment going forward. We've talked about how much of a problem, and we've talked about what those problems actually are, but what can we do about it? We're swarmed by plastic packaging and wrappers, and how do we avoid all that? Well, one way to do so is to reduce the amount of plastic that we buy by trying to find items that don't have as much plastic wrapping. Some products market using reduced packaging. You can reduce by buying larger containers versus individualized containers. You can also reuse plastics. We're using plastics instead of buying disposable or discardable plastics. Think water bottles that are reusable versus buying the pre-packaged water bottles. Or you can recycle. Of the three, recycling is not as effective necessarily due to issues with the recycling process. China, as of 2018, no longer acquires plastics from us that we don't recycle. This leads to issues with what do we do with these plastics. That's arguably why the numbers in the landfills are as high as they are. 75% of plastic goes in landfills. But recycling is still better because you're sorting it ahead of time and trying to make that process better. And it's likely at some point that technologies will change that may give us a better opportunity to recycle. Recycling is still better than just throwing it straight into a trash or outright littering it. Today we've discussed how much plastic waste is generated. We've discussed what the problems are with plastic waste, and we've discussed what we can do about it. I hope I've been effective in communicating the urgency for reducing plastic waste, so that way our kids and their kids can have an environment that's getting better, not becoming a plastic waste dump. I hope that I've encouraged you to do something different and join me and many others around the world to reduce your plastic waste output, so that perhaps one day in the not too distant future, we as a nation can say honestly and proudly, waste not, want not. Thank you.